Zara's claws clicked nervously against her communication pad as she reviewed the daily reports from the mining station Alpha 7. The numbers looked good, productivity was up, and morale among the workers remained stable. As station commander, she took pride in running one of the most efficient operations in the Galactic Mining Consortium. Her reptilian features reflected satisfaction in the holographic display's blue glow. The soft hiss of the door announced someone's arrival. Marcus stepped in her office, carrying 2 steaming cups of that strange earth beverage he called coffee. His movements were unhurried and gentle as always. After 3 years of marriage, she still marveled at how different humans were from every other species she'd encountered. "Thought you might need this," Marcus said, setting 1 cup beside her workstation. His brown eyes held that warm expression that had first drawn her to him during the diplomatic conference on Kepler Station. Zara accepted the cup gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. "The quarterly reports are due tomorrow. I'm trying to make sure everything looks perfect for the consortium inspectors." Marcus settled into the chair across from her desk, his frame appearing almost fragile compared to her 7-foot-tall, muscular build. Humans were such small creatures, barely reaching her shoulder even when she crouched down. Their skin was soft and unmarked by the natural armor plating that protected most sentient species. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons at all. "You worry too much," Marcus said, sipping his coffee. "This station runs better than any other facility in the sector. The workers respect you, production exceeds all targets, and we haven't had a single major incident in 18 months. She reached across the desk with her massive, scaled hand and gently touched his much smaller one. The size difference never failed to amaze her. His bones felt so delicate beneath her careful touch. "Sometimes I wonder how your species ever survived long enough to reach the stars. You're so fragile." Marcus chuckled, that pleasant sound that always made her feel warm inside. "We're tougher than we look. Humans have a way of surprising people." Before she could respond, her communication array erupted in urgent alerts. Red warning lights bathed the office as the emergency klaxon began its distinctive wail. Zara's training kicked in immediately as she accessed the security feeds. "What's happening?" Marcus asked, his voice calm despite the chaos of alarms surrounding them. Zara's blood turned cold as the security displays revealed the source of the emergency. "Pirates. 3 heavily armed ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're jamming our communications and demanding surrender." The main view screen flickered to life, showing a scarred Korthak battle commander with ceremonial bone piercings and war paint marking his achievements. "Mining Station Alpha 7. This is War Chief Brutic of the Crimson Fong Raiders. Your facility is now under our control. Surrender immediately and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in the execution of all personnel." Zara's claws extended involuntarily, her species' natural response to threats. The Korthak were among the most feared pirates in this sector of space. They were massive, even by galactic standards, with thick hide that could stop most small arms fire. Their reputation for brutality was legendary. "How many ships do we have in dock?" Marcus asked, his voice still unnaturally calm. 2 cargo haulers and 1 passenger transport. Nothing with weapons. Zara's mind raced through their options. The station's defensive systems were minimal, designed more for meteor impacts than military assault. "We have security teams, but they're trained for civil disturbances, not warfare." The pirate commander continued his broadcast. "You have 15 minutes to disable your shields and prepare docking bays for our arrival. Any delay will result in immediate destruction of your habitat modules." Zara looked at her husband, expecting to see fear in his eyes. Instead, Marcus was studying the tactical display with an expression she'd never seen before. His usual gentle demeanor had been replaced by something calculating and cold. "Marcus, we need to evacuate the civilian areas. Get the non-essential personnel to the emergency pods." "No," he said quietly. "That won't be necessary." "What do you mean?" "These are Korthak raiders. They don't take prisoners for ransom. They kill everyone and strip the station for salvage. Marcus stood up and moved to her weapons locker, entering the access code he'd somehow observed her using. Zara, I need you to trust me. Send a message to the raiders telling them you're considering their demands, but need 20 minutes to organize the surrender. 20 minutes? Marcus, what are you thinking? We can't fight them. Look at the size of those ships. He was examining the contents of the weapons locker with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. How many raiders do you estimate per ship? Maybe 40 or 50 per vessel. So about 150 total. Marcus, each Korthak warrior stands 8 feet tall and weighs over 400 pounds. They're natural predators. Our security team has 12 members, and they're mostly Velnari administrators with basic combat training. Marcus selected a standard plasma rifle and began checking its power cell and targeting systems with practiced efficiency. Zara had never seen him handle weapons before. During their courtship and marriage, he'd always seemed completely nonviolent, almost pacifist in his outlook. "Where did you learn to do that?" she asked, watching him field strip the weapon and reassemble it in less than 30 seconds. "I had some training before I took the mining job," he said evasively. "Zara, I'm going to ask you to do something that might not make sense. I need you to seal yourself in the command center and don't come out until I give the all clear." "What?" "No, I'm not abandoning my station or my crew." Marcus moved to the communication console and began typing rapidly. "I'm uploading something to the station's database. It's insurance. If something happens to me, make sure this information reaches the Galactic Council." Before she could ask what he meant, the proximity alarms intensified. The first raider ship was approaching Docking Bay 3. On the security monitors, she could see the massive Korthak warriors preparing their boarding equipment. "Please, Zura, trust me. Lock down the command center and don't come out no matter what you hear." Something in his voice made her step back. This wasn't the gentle, quiet human she'd married. This was someone else entirely, someone who moved with purpose and spoke with absolute certainty. "Marcus, you're scaring me. Weren't you telling me?" He paused at the door and looked back at her with those same brown eyes, but now they held depths she'd never noticed before. "I love you, Zara, more than my own life. No one is going to hurt you or your crew while I'm here." The door sealed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving her alone with the blaring alarms and growing dread. On the security feed, she watched her husband walk calmly toward Docking Bay 3, carrying only a single plasma rifle against an army of the galaxy's most feared warriors. She initiated the command center lockdown as he'd requested, but kept the internal security feeds active. Whatever was about to happen, she needed to witness it. Her husband was walking towards certain death, and she couldn't understand why he seemed so confident. The first raider ship completed docking with a metallic clang that shook the entire station. Through the security cameras, she watched the airlock cycle open and the first Korthak warriors step aboard her station. They were even more massive than she'd remembered, their natural armor gleaming under the corridor lights. Marcus stood at the far end of the corridor, looking impossibly small and fragile. The lead Korthak warrior pointed at him and roared something in their guttural language. The universal translator rendered it as a demand for immediate surrender. Marcus raised the plasma rifle to his shoulder. Zara closed her eyes, unable to watch her husband's final moments. When she opened them seconds later, expecting to see his broken body on the deck, she instead saw something that made no sense at all. 3 Korthak warriors lay motionless on the deck, and Marcus was moving toward the remaining raiders with fluid, deadly precision. Zara's eyes remained glued to the security feed, her mind struggling to process what she was witnessing. Marcus moved through the corridor like liquid death, each movement precise and economical. The plasma rifle in his hands sang a deadly song as it discharged again and again, each shot finding its mark with impossible accuracy. The Korthak warriors, beings who had terrorized the galaxy for generations, seemed confused by this small human's tactics. They were used to enemies who relied on brute strength or superior firepower. Marcus used neither. Instead, He flowed between their attacks like smoke, always appearing where they didn't expect him. A massive Korthak swung a powered warhammer that could crush a small vehicle. Marcus simply wasn't there when it arrived, having rolled beneath the swing and come up behind the warrior. The plasma rifle spoke once more, and another raider fell. "Impossible," Zara whispered, watching the feed. Marcus had eliminated 7 warriors in less than 2 minutes. The remaining Korthak in the first wave had taken defensive positions and were calling for reinforcements. She activated the inter-ship communication array, desperate to understand what was happening. The Korthak battle frequency crackled with confused reports. "The human moves like a shadow. Our weapons cannot track him. He fights without honor, striking from concealment like a coward. Request immediate backup. The human fights like he knows our every move." War Chief Brudik's voice cut through the chatter. "It's one small human. How are seasoned warriors being defeated by a creature that weighs less than my smallest soldier?" Through the security system, Zara watched Marcus reach the junction that led to docking bays 1 and 2. The second and third raider ships were completing their docking procedures, and she could see dozens more warriors preparing to board. Any rational being would retreat at this point, but Marcus continued forward. He paused at a maintenance access panel and began typing rapidly into the station system. Zara checked her command console and saw that he was accessing the environmental controls. What was he planning? The lights in sections B and C dimmed to emergency levels. Marcus had plunged half the station into near darkness. The Korthak warriors relied heavily on their natural vision, which was adapted for the bright, harsh light of their homeworld. In the dim emergency lighting, their advantage was significantly reduced. "Clever," Zara murmured, beginning to see the strategy. But it was still one human against over 100 heavily armed raiders. The second wave of Korthak emerged from docking bay 1, moving more cautiously now that they'd heard the fate of their comrades. They advanced in formation, covering each other's movement and checking every corner. These weren't just raiders. They were experienced military professionals. Marcus seemed to have vanished completely. The security feeds showed empty corridors as the Korthak methodically advanced toward the station's central areas. For several long minutes, nothing happened. The raiders grew confident, believing the human was either dead or had fled to hide. Then, the station's fire suppression system activated in Section B. The corridor filled with thick, choking foam designed to smother industrial fires. The Korthak found themselves blind and struggling to breathe, their formation completely disrupted. That's when Marcus struck. He emerged from a maintenance shaft directly above the confused warriors, moving like a deadly ghost through the foam. The plasma rifle had been abandoned in favor of more intimate weapons, a vibraknife he'd somehow acquired, and what appeared to be improvised explosive devices. Zara watched in horrified fascination as her gentle husband systematically dismantled the second wave of raiders. He used their size against them, staying close where their larger weapons couldn't be brought to bear effectively. When they tried to grab him with their massive hands, he seemed to anticipate their movements and flow away from their grasp. The third wave was already advancing through docking bay 2 when the survivors of the second wave retreated in panic. War Chief Brudik's communications were becoming increasingly frantic. "What manner of creature is this human? Report. Where are his capabilities?" One of the surviving raiders gasped into his communicator. "Chief, he fights like he can see the future. Every move we make, he's already prepared for it. He knows our tactics better than we do." Marcus appeared on the security feed again, now carrying additional weapons he'd taken from fallen raiders. He was checking each one with professional competence, selecting ammunition, and adjusting targeting systems with the ease of long familiarity. That's when Zara noticed something that made her blood freeze. Marcus wasn't fighting desperately like someone protecting his home. He was methodical, efficient, almost bored. This wasn't a civilian suddenly forced into combat. This was a professional at work. She activated her personal communication line, overriding the security protocols. "Marcus, can you hear me?" His voice came back immediately, calm, and controlled despite the chaos around him. "I'm here, Zura. Stay locked down. This will be over soon." "Marcus, who are you?" "Really?" There was a long pause before he answered. "Someone who loves you very much. Someone who will explain everything when this is finished." The third wave of raiders had reached the main corridor intersection. They were moving with extreme caution now, having learned from their comrades' fate. Their leader was a scarred veteran, carrying weapons that looked like they could punch through ship armor. Marcus stepped out into the intersection, completely in the open. The Korthak opened fire immediately, multiple heavy weapons discharging simultaneously. The intersection filled with energy beams and projectile rounds that should have turned any living creature into vapor. When the smoke cleared, Marcus was gone. The raiders looked around frantically, unable to understand how he'd vanished from point-blank range. Their confusion lasted exactly 3 seconds before Marcus appeared behind them, moving within human speed. What happened next defied everything Zara thought she knew about physics and biology. Marcus moved through the group of warriors like he was dancing, every step perfectly timed to avoid their attacks, while positioning himself for maximum effectiveness. He struck with surgical precision, targeting specific points that dropped each massive warrior instantly. When the last of the third wave fell, silence descended on the station, except for the continued wailing of the emergency alarms. War Chief Brudek's voice crackled over the communication system, now holding a note of something Zara had never heard from a Korthak before: fear. "Human, I know you can hear me. What are you?" Marcus picked up a fallen communicator and responded. When he spoke, his voice carried an authority that made Zara's spine tingle. "I'm someone you made a mistake in threatening. You have 30 seconds to undock from this station and leave this system. If you're still here when I count to 0, I'll board your ships and show you what a real predator looks like." The silence that followed stretched for nearly a minute. Then, War Chief Brudek's voice returned, tight with barely controlled rage. "You think killing a few warriors frightens us? I have 50 more soldiers aboard my ship, and weapons that can reduce the station to scrap metal." 20 seconds, Marcus replied calmly. "You cannot threaten the Crimson Fong. We are the terror of this sector." 10 seconds. Zara could see through the external cameras that the raider ships were indeed powering up their weapon systems. Energy readings spiked as they prepared to carry out their threat to destroy the station. 5 seconds. "Wait." War Chief Brudek's voice cracked. "What guarantee do we have that you'll let us leave?" "None," Marcus said simply. "But it's better than the alternative." The raider ships hesitated for another moment, their weapons trained on the station's critical systems. Then, one by one, they began disengaging from the docking bays. Zara watched in amazement as 3 ships full of the galaxy's most feared pirates retreated from her mining station, driven away by her quiet, gentle husband who had somehow transformed into the most dangerous individual she'd ever witnessed. As the ships disappeared into hyperspace, Marcus's voice came over the communication system. "Zara, it's safe to come out now. We need to talk." Zara's hands trembled as she disengaged the command center's lockdown systems. The silence that had replaced the emergency alarms felt heavier than the chaos that had preceded it. She stepped into the corridor and immediately noticed the acrid smell of discharged plasma and something else, the metallic scent of Korthak blood. Her husband stood at the intersection ahead, calmly cleaning his hands with a maintenance cloth. The bodies of the fallen raiders had already been moved aside, stacked with efficient precision against the corridor walls. Marcus had removed his shirt, revealing a physique that seemed different from what she remembered. His muscles were more defined, his posture more alert, and there were scars across his back that she'd never noticed before. "Marcus!" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. He turned toward her, and for a moment she saw a stranger looking back. His brown eyes held depth she'd never noticed, the kind of depths that came from experiences no civilian should ever have. Then, his expression softened, becoming the gentle man she'd married. "I know you have questions," he said, approaching slowly with his hands visible and non-threatening. "I'll answer all of them. Who are you?" The question burst from her lips before she could stop it. The Marcus I married couldn't fight his way out of supply closet. You just single-handedly defeated an entire raider company. Marcus gestured toward her office. Perhaps we should sit down for this conversation. They walked in silence, past the evidence of the battle. Zara found herself studying the positioning of the bodies, the precision of the wounds, the tactical efficiency of their placement. This hadn't been a desperate struggle. It had been a massacre conducted by an expert. In her office, Marcus settled into his usual chair, but his posture remained alert, ready. My real name is Marcus Chun. I wasn't lying about that. I'm 34 years old, originally from Earth's colony on New Shanghai. Most of what I've told you about my background is true. But I didn't spend the last 15 years working mining operations. I was a member of Earth's Special Forces unit known as the Night Watch Division. Zara's blood chilled. She'd heard whispers of the Night Watch Division during her military academy training. They were Earth's response to the galaxy's more dangerous threats, the ones that regular military couldn't handle. Most species considered them myths, stories invented to make humanity seem more dangerous than their fragile appearance suggested. That's impossible. The Night Watch Division is a legend, something the human government invented to scare their enemies. Marcus reached into his jacket and withdrew a small device she'd never seen before. When activated, it projected a three-dimensional identification card with official Earth military seals. Major Marcus Chun, Night Watch Division, Psychological Operations, and Direct Action Specialist. 15 years of active service, 43 successful operations across 16 different star systems. The identification was authentic. Zara's own military training allowed her to recognize the security features that made such documents impossible to forge. Psychological operations? My job was to study alien psychology and develop tactics that could neutralize threats without requiring massive military deployment. The Night Watch Division exists because humanity learned early that we couldn't compete with other species on raw physical capability. We had to be smarter, more adaptable, more creative. Zara sank back in her chair, her mind reeling. The things you did during the fight. Moving like that, anticipating their tactics. How is that possible? 15 years of studying every known hostile species in the galaxy. The Korthak have been raiding human colonies for decades. We've developed extensive psychological profiles on their behavior patterns, combat doctrine, and decision-making processes. They're predictable once you understand their cultural conditioning. But the speed, the precision. You moved like you had enhanced reflexes. Marcus smiled sadly. Humans are better at some things than most species realize. Our reaction times are actually faster than average for galactic standard. Our muscle efficiency is higher. We process multiple sensory inputs more effectively. What other species call impossible reflexes, we call adequate training. Why didn't you tell me? The question hung between them like a physical barrier. Marcus stared at his hands before answering. Because I wanted a normal life. Do you know what 15 years of psychological operations does to a person? Zara, I've studied the worst impulses of every species in the galaxy. I've been inside the minds of creatures that would terrify most people just by existing. I've killed more beings than I care to count, and I've done it efficiently and without hesitation. His voice carried a weight that made Zara understand the true scope of what he was telling her. When I met you at the diplomatic conference, you looked at me like I was just a person. Not a weapon, not a tool, not something to be feared or used. Just Marcus. I've forgotten what that felt like. So you lied to me for 3 years. I omitted things. Everything I told you about my feelings for you was true. My desire for a peaceful life was real. I thought I could leave that part of myself behind. Before Zara could respond, her communication array activated again. This time, the caller identification showed official Earth military channels with maximum encryption protocols. A stern-faced human woman appeared on the main screen, wearing the uniform of an Earth Fleet admiral. Behind her, Zara could see what appeared to be a military command center. Major Chun, this is Admiral Harrison. We've been monitoring the situation at Mining Station Alpha 7. Are you and the civilian population secure? Marcus straightened unconsciously, falling back in a military posture. Yes, Admiral. Threat neutralized with minimal collateral damage. Station personnel are unharmed. Outstanding work, Major. However, we have a problem. The Korthak ships that fled your position have contacted their main fleet. War Chief Brutic is claiming that humans possess secret military technology and are planning aggressive expansion into Korthak territory. Zara felt the floor drop away beneath her. The political implications were staggering. The Korthak hegemony controlled 12 star systems and had mutual defense treaties with several other aggressive species. Admiral, with respect, I'm retired. I'm not planning to return to active duty. Admiral Harrison's expression remained stern. I'm afraid that decision may no longer be yours to make, Major. The Korthak are demanding an explanation from the Galactic Council. They're claiming this incident proves that Earth has been secretly developing super soldiers in violation of interspecies treaties. That's ridiculous, Zara interjected. Marcus isn't a super soldier. He's just well-trained. The Admiral's attention shifted to her. Commanders are a vex, I presume. Your husband's training represents 15 years of Earth's most advanced military development. Techniques that most species would consider impossible for a creature of human physical limitations. Marcus stood up, his demeanor shifting back toward the dangerous competence she'd witnessed during the fight. What are you asking me to do, Admiral? The Galactic Council has called for an emergency session to address the Korthak claims. They're demanding a demonstration of human military capabilities to determine if Earth poses a threat to galactic peace. You're being recalled to active duty to serve as Earth's representative in these proceedings. Zara felt something cold settle in her stomach. What kind of demonstration? Admiral Harrison's expression grew grim. The Korthak have issued a formal challenge under ancient galactic combat laws. Trial by combat to determine whether humanity represents a legitimate threat or merely happened upon a lucky victory. They selected their greatest champion to face Earth's representative. Marcus's voice remained calm, but Zara could see tension gathering in his shoulders. Who did they choose? War Chief Brutic himself. And he's not coming alone. The combat trial will be conducted under traditional Korthak rules, which allow for a champion's honor guard. He'll have 4 elite warriors supporting him. The silence that followed was deafening. Zara looked between the Admiral and her husband, understanding beginning to dawn. You're asking Marcus to fight 5 of the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. Alone. The combat trial must be conducted within 72 hours, or the Galactic Council will accept the Korthak claims as valid and impose restrictions on human expansion. Major Chun is the only human with the necessary experience and psychological profile to handle this type of engagement. Marcus met Zara's eyes, and she saw something there that made her understand the true scope of what her husband had been hiding from her. I'll do it, he said quietly. Admiral Harrison nodded. A transport will arrive at your station in 6 hours. Major, bring whatever equipment you feel is necessary. This engagement will be broadcast across the galaxy, and the future of human expansion may depend on the outcome. The transmission ended, leaving them alone with the weight of what had just occurred. Marcus, Zara said softly, 5 Korthak elite warriors. That's not a combat trial. That's an execution. Marcus turned toward the weapons locker, his movements once again taking on that fluid efficiency she was beginning to recognize. Maybe, but if I don't accept, Earth will be classified as a restricted species and confined to our current territories. Millions of humans will be trapped in overcrowded systems, and our colonies will be left defenseless against future raids. There has to be another way. Marcus began selecting weapons and equipment with professional competence. There's one thing about humans that most species don't understand, Zara. We're not just adaptable. We're stubborn. When someone tries to put us in a cage, we tend to break things. As she watched her husband prepare for what seemed like certain death, Zara began to understand that Marcus hadn't just been hiding his military background. He'd been hiding the fundamental nature of what humanity really was beneath their fragile appearance. The Galactic Council's combat arena on Nexus Prime was a testament to the galaxy's most ancient traditions. Carved from a single massive asteroid, the spherical chamber could accommodate over 1 million spectators from hundreds of different species. Today, it was filled to capacity, with representatives from every major civilization watching what many believed would be humanity's final moment on the galactic stage. Zara stood in the human delegation's viewing box, her claws digging unconsciously into the railing as she watched the pre-combat ceremonies. 3 days had passed since the transport arrived at Mining Station Alpha 7, and she had used every moment to learn more about the man she had married. Admiral Harrison had provided her with Marcus's complete service record, classified files that painted a picture of someone who had single-handedly prevented 3 interspecies wars and neutralized threats that would have required entire fleets to handle conventionally. He wasn't just a soldier. He was Earth's secret answer to a galaxy that viewed humanity as weak and irrelevant. "Commander Vex," Admiral Harrison said, settling beside her in the viewing box, "your husband has requested that you serve as his designated witness for the combat trial. What does that mean? If he falls in combat, you'll be responsible for ensuring his tactical reports reach Earth Command. Everything he's learned about advanced Korthak combat techniques must be preserved for future analysis." Zara's throat tightened. "You're already planning for his death. I'm planning for every possibility." Major Chin understands the stakes better than anyone. This isn't just about proving human capability. It's about establishing our place in the galactic hierarchy. The arena's central platform descended from the ceiling, carrying the Korthak delegation. War Chief Brutix stood at the center, his massive frame encased in ceremonial armor that had been blessed by their war priests. His 4 chosen warriors flanked him, each one a legendary fighter selected from the Korthak's most elite units. The smallest of the 5 warriors stood nearly 9 feet tall and weighed over 500 pounds. Their natural armor could deflect most small arms fire, and their weapons were crafted from materials that could cut through starship hulls. They had trained for this moment their entire lives, viewing it as the ultimate expression of Korthak superiority. The platform opposite them remained empty. "Where is he?" Zara whispered. Admiral Harrison checked her chronometer. "He has 2 more minutes before the combat begins." Major Chun requested permission to make his own entrance. The arena's announcement system crackled to life, broadcasting in over 300 languages simultaneously. "Citizens of the galaxy, you are witnessing a formal trial by combat under the ancient laws established by the Galactic Accords. The outcome of this contest will determine humanity's standing within the galactic community." War Chief Brutic raised his massive war axe above his head and roared a challenge that echoed through the arena. The sound was picked up and amplified by thousands of Korthak spectators, creating a wall of noise that seemed to shake the asteroid itself. That's when Marcus appeared. He didn't arrive on a platform or through any of the arena's official entrances. Instead, he simply stepped out of what appeared to be empty air in the center of the combat area, 50 feet from the Korthak formation. The arena fell silent. Marcus wore no armor, carried no visible weapons, and appeared completely relaxed. He looked exactly like the gentle mining administrator Zara had known, except for his eyes. Even from the viewing box, she could see that his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator evaluating prey. "Impossible, Admiral Harrison Breted." How did he bypass the arena's security systems? War Chief Brutic's confusion was visible even from a distance. The Korthak had expected either an impressive display of human military technology or a futile gesture of defiance. Marcus's casual appearance suggested neither. "Human," Brutic's voice boomed across the arena. "Where are your weapons? Your armor? Do you mock this sacred combat?" Marcus's response was barely audible, but the arena's amplification systems carried his words to every corner of the massive chamber. "I am my weapon." The Korthak formation shifted nervously. This wasn't what they had prepared for. Their battle plans assumed a human warrior equipped with advanced technology, someone they could overwhelm through superior strength and coordination. Marcus's apparent defenselessness created a tactical uncertainty that disrupted their psychological preparation. The combat began without ceremony as War Chief Brudok charged forward, his war axe describing a devastating arc that could bisect most creatures. His 4 warriors moved to flank Marcus, their coordination perfect after years of fighting together. Marcus waited until the last possible moment, then simply stepped aside. Brudok's charge carried him past where Marcus had been standing. The war chief's momentum was too great to stop, and he crashed into the arena's energy barrier with enough force to rattle the entire structure. The 4 flanking warriors converged on Marcus's new position, their weapons creating a web of death that should have been impossible to escape. Marcus disappeared. Not quickly, not through advanced technology, but literally vanished as if he had never existed. Cloaking technology, someone shouted from the Korthak delegation. The humans are cheating. But the arena's sensors detected no energy signatures, no technological interference of any kind. Marcus had simply used the Korthak's own expectations against them, moving in a way that exploited blind spots in their visual processing and cognitive assumptions. He reappeared behind the smallest warrior, moving with liquid precision. His hand struck specific points on the Korthak's anatomy with surgical accuracy. The warrior dropped like his strings had been cut, still breathing but completely immobilized. Neural disruption technique, Admiral Harrison murmure. We didn't know he'd mastered those. The remaining 3 warriors spun toward Marcus, but he was already gone again. This time he emerged from their formation carrying the fallen warrior's weapon, a massive blade designed for someone 3 times his size. In Marcus's hands, it moved like it weighed nothing at all. War Chief Brudok recovered from his collision with the barrier and rejoined the fight, his rage now overwhelming his tactical thinking. The 4 remaining Korthak attacked as a unit, their coordination flawless, and their intent murderous. Marcus met their charge head-on. What followed defied every assumption about human physical limitations. Marcus moved through their attacks like water flowing around stones, always appearing where their weapons weren't. The massive sword in his hands became an extension of his will, striking with impossible precision at exactly the right moments. When the second warrior fell, the arena erupted in confused shouting from the various species delegations. When the third warrior dropped moments later, the noise became a roar of disbelief. War Chief Brudok found himself facing a small human alone, his 3 remaining warriors unconscious but alive around him. His ceremonial armor was scored with precise cuts that had somehow penetrated what should have been impregnable protection. "What are you?" Brudok gasped, his earlier confidence replaced by something approaching fear. Marcus stood perfectly still in the center of the arena, the captured blade held casually at his side. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly to every corner of the massive chamber. "I'm what happens when you threaten the people I care about." The final exchange lasted less than 10 seconds. Brudok attacked with the fury of a creature fighting for its life, his war axe moving in patterns that should have overwhelmed any defender. Marcus simply wasn't there when the attacks arrived. When War Chief Brudok fell, the arena plunged into absolute silence. Marcus stood alone among 5 unconscious Korthak warriors, completely uninjured and breathing normally. He dropped the captured sword and walked toward the human delegation's viewing box. Combat trial concluded. His voice echoed through the arena's communication system. "I believe humanity's capabilities have been adequately demonstrated." The explosion of noise that followed was unlike anything in the arena's history. Representatives from hundreds of species shouted questions, demands for explanation, and expressions of disbelief. Some delegations immediately began requesting private meetings with Earth's representatives. Zara found herself surrounded by admirals and diplomats, all asking questions she couldn't answer. But her attention remained focused on the small figure walking calmly across the arena floor. Admiral Harrison was speaking rapidly into a secure communicator. Priority 1 message to Earth Command. Mission accomplished. Galactic perception of human capabilities has been successfully recalibrated. Recommend immediate upgrade to our diplomatic status and military threat assessment. But Zara was thinking about something else entirely. Marcus had fought with the skill and precision of someone who had done this before. Not once, but many times. The techniques he displayed weren't something you learned in training. They were something you developed through necessity. When Marcus reached the viewing box, he looked up at her with those same gentle brown eyes she'd fallen in love with. But now she understood what lay behind them. "Is it over?" she asked. Marcus smiled, but it was a different smile now. One that held depths she was only beginning to comprehend. "This part is over. But I have a feeling things are about to get very complicated for humanity." Around them, the arena continued to buzz with frantic activity as representatives from across the galaxy tried to understand what they had just witnessed. The small, fragile species from Earth had just demonstrated capabilities that shifted the balance of power in ways no one had anticipated. Zara realized that her husband hadn't just been hiding his military background. He had been hiding the fact that humanity was far more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy had ever suspected 6 months after the combat trial on Nexus Prime. Zara stood in the observation deck of Earth's newest diplomatic station, watching the steady stream of ships arriving from across the galaxy. The Terran embassy had become the busiest facility in the sector, with representatives from dozens of species requesting meetings, trade negotiations, and what the diplomatic corps politely termed capability assessments. Marcus appeared beside her, carrying 2 cups of coffee and moving with that same quiet grace she now understood was the result of years of deadly training. His retirement from active military service had been officially accepted, but Zara noticed that Admiral Harrison still called him regularly for consultation on developing situations. "The Vorthak delegation arrived this morning," he said, handing her the steaming cup. "They're requesting a formal alliance treaty." Zara accepted the coffee gratefully, still marveling at how normal moments like this could feel after everything they discovered about each other. The Vorthak refused even basic trade agreements with humanity for over a decade. Now, they want a military alliance. Amazing what a change in perspective can accomplish. Through the observation windows, they could see the massive Vorthak dreadnought docked at the station's largest bay. The ship bristled with enough firepower to level a small moon, yet its commanders had approached Earth's representatives with a level of deference that would have been unthinkable before the arena. "Marcus, I've been reading the intelligence reports Admiral Harrison cleared me for. The combat trial didn't just change how other species view humanity. It changed everything." Marcus nodded, his expression growing serious. 3 species have formally requested human military advisors. The Setian Republic wants to hire Earth mercenaries for their border conflicts. Even the hegemonists are being more careful about their territorial expansion. Because they're afraid. Because they're uncertain. For the first time in galactic history, there's a species that doesn't fit into anyone's established categories. We're not overwhelmingly powerful like the Korthak, or technologically advanced like the Netheran, or psychically gifted like the Mindari. We're something else entirely. Zara turned from the window to study her husband. In the months since the combat trial, she had learned to read the subtle signs that indicated when Marcus was analyzing a situation from his military perspective rather than simply talking as her husband. "What's really happening out there?" Marcus was silent for a long moment, watching the ships moving through space beyond the station. The galaxy operated on certain assumptions about species capabilities and limitations. Those assumptions created a stable political structure that had lasted for over 2 centuries. When I defeated War Chief Brudick and his warriors, I didn't just prove that humans could fight. I proved that all the established assumptions might be wrong. And that scares them more than any weapon could. Exactly. The Galactic Council is quietly reassessing the threat levels of every species in their database. If humanity was drastically underestimated, what other species might have hidden capabilities? What other assumptions are wrong? Before Zara could respond, her communication pad chimed with an urgent priority message. The sender identification showed Admiral Harrison with maximum security protocols. Commander Vex, Major Chun, please report to Secure Conference Room Alpha immediately. We have a developing situation that requires your immediate attention. They made their way through the station's corridors, past delegations from a dozen different species, all of whom watched Marcus with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed nervousness. Word of the combat trial had spread far beyond the official reports, growing into legends that made Marcus seem almost mythological. Secure Conference Room Alpha was one of the most protected spaces on the station, surrounded by enough security measures to prevent any form of electronic surveillance. Admiral Harrison waited inside, with two other figures Zara didn't recognize, a stern-faced human woman in civilian clothes and what appeared to be a Nethran scientist. "Thank you for coming quickly," Admiral Harrison said. "I'd like you to meet Director Sarah Chun from Earth Intelligence Services and Dr. Kelthax from the Nethran Science Council." Marcus straightened slightly at the mention of Earth Intelligence Services, his posture shifting into something more alert. "Director Chun, this is Major Marcus Chun, no relation despite the name, and Commanders are Vex. They were directly involved in the incident that precipitated our current situation." Director Chun studied Marcus with the calculating gaze of someone accustomed to evaluating potential threats. "Major, we've had an interesting development. 3 days ago, the Korthak hegemony made an unprecedented request to the Galactic Council." "What kind of request?" Zara asked. "They want to formally apologize for their attack on Mining Station Alpha 7 and request permission to study human military techniques." The silence that followed was broken by Dr. Kelthax, whose translated voice carried overtones of scientific fascination. "The Korthak have never apologized for anything in their recorded history. Their entire culture is based on strength and dominance. This development has created significant concern among the scientific community." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "They're not apologizing. They're repositioning. The Korthak respect strength above all else, and they've concluded that humanity possesses capabilities they need to understand." "That's our assessment as well," Director Chin agreed. "But it gets more complicated. The hegemonists have been conducting covert intelligence operations, targeting Earth colonies, trying to determine if we have other hidden military assets. The Mindari Collective has been probing human minds to assess our psychological capabilities. And the Nethran Science Council has formally requested access to human military training programs." Dr. Kelthax gestured apologetically. "My government believes that human combat effectiveness may be based on previously unknown neurological advantages. We wish to study these capabilities for purely defensive purposes." Zara looked between the assembled representatives, understanding beginning to dawn. Everyone thinks Marcus represents standard human capability. "Worse," Admiral Harrison said grimly. "They think he represents the minimum standard for human military personnel. The galaxy assumes that Earth has been hiding an entire population of individuals with similar abilities." Marcus rubbed his temples, a gesture Zara recognized as his response to particularly complex problems. "How many people know the truth about the Night Watch Division?" "Fewer than 50 individuals across all of Earth's government and military structures," Director Chin replied. "The program was designed to be completely compartmentalized. As far as official records show, you spent 15 years working mining operations before your marriage. But the combat trial was broadcast across the galaxy. Every intelligence service will be analyzing those recordings frame by frame." "Which brings us to why you're here," Admiral Harrison said. "Earth Command has a decision to make. We can either continue the current perception that humanity possesses widespread advanced combat capabilities, or we can reveal the truth about the Night Watch Division and acknowledge that Major Chun represents an exceptional individual rather than a typical human. What are the implications of each option?" Zara asked. Dr. Kelthax answered first. If humanity is believed to possess widespread advanced capabilities, your species will immediately be classified as a major galactic power. Trade opportunities will expand, territorial restrictions will be lifted, and Earth will be invited to participate in the highest levels of galactic governance. But, Director Chun continued, it will also make humanity a target for every aggressive species that views us as a potential threat. The hegemonists already suspect we're planning military expansion. The Korthak will want to test their theories about human capabilities through direct conflict. Marcus stood and moved to the conference room's single window, staring out at the ships beyond. And if we reveal the truth, humanity returns to its previous status as a minor species with limited galactic influence, Admiral Harrison said. Safe but constrained. Earth's expansion will be restricted and will remain dependent on other species for advanced technology and protection. The weight of the decision settled over the room like a physical presence. Zara realized that her husband's actions in defending their mining station had inadvertently forced humanity to choose between safety and freedom on a galactic scale. There's a third option, Marcus said quietly, still facing the window. What do you mean? Director Chen asked. Marcus turned back to face the group, and Zara saw something in his expression that made her understand he was no longer thinking like a retired soldier. The galaxy assumes humanity has hidden capabilities. What if we actually develop them? Admiral Harrison leaned forward. Explain. The Night Watch Division was created because Earth needed individuals who could handle threats that conventional military couldn't address. But it was always a small program, limited by the assumption that few people could handle the psychological requirements. You're suggesting expansion of the program? Director Chen's voice carried a note of concern. I'm suggesting that we stop thinking small. The combat trial proved that human adaptability and psychological flexibility are advantages that other species can't replicate. Instead of hiding from the galaxy's expectations, we meet them. Dr. Kelthax's translated voice carried obvious excitement. You would create an entire military force based on the capabilities you demonstrated? Not just military, Marcus said. Scientists who can think outside the established paradigms. Diplomats who can negotiate with species that others find impossible to understand. Engineers who approach problems from angles that other species never consider. Zara felt something shift in her understanding of the situation. You're talking about turning humanity's adaptability into our defining characteristic. Every species in the galaxy has something that makes them formidable. The Korthak have their strength, the Nethrin have their technology, the Mindari have their psychic abilities. Humanity has something none of them possess, the ability to become whatever the situation requires. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications of what Marcus was suggesting. It wasn't just a military strategy. It was a complete redefinition of humanity's place in the galaxy. Director Chun was the first to speak. The resources required would be enormous. Training, equipment, planetary facilities, and the psychological screening alone would take decades. But if successful, Admiral Harrison said slowly, humanity would become the galaxy's most versatile species. We'd be the ones other civilizations call when they encounter problems their specialized capabilities can't handle. Marcus returned to his seat beside Zara, and she saw that gentle smile she'd fallen in love with. But now she understood what lay behind it. Not just personal warmth, but the confidence of someone who had looked into the darkness and found ways to push it back. The choice isn't really between revealing our limitations or maintaining a deception, he said. The choice is between accepting limitations or transcending them. Dr. Kelthax's excitement was now unmistakable. The Nethrin Science Council would be honored to participate in such research. The psychological adaptability you describe would revolutionize our understanding of sapient potential. Admiral Harrison activated her secure communicator. I'm calling an emergency session of Earth Strategic Council. This decision is too important to make without full governmental approval. As the meeting began to dissolve into smaller conversations about logistics and implementation, Zara found herself alone with Marcus for a moment. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. "You could have a quiet retirement. We could go back to the mining station and live normal lives." Marcus took her hand, his touch as gentle as it had always been. "Zara, I spent 15 years preparing for threats that might someday endanger the people I care about. Now, I have a chance to help humanity become something that doesn't need to fear those threats." Looking into his eyes, she saw both the dangerous professional who had single-handedly defeated 5 Korthak warriors and the gentle man who brought her coffee every morning. For the first time, she understood that they weren't separate people. They were both expressions of what humanity could become when necessity demanded it. Besides, Marcus added with that familiar warmth in his voice, "Someone has to train the next generation of humans who can do impossible things. I can't think of a better way to spend the rest of my life." As they watched the galaxy's representatives through the conference room window, Zara realized that Marcus had been wrong about one thing. The combat trial hadn't been the end of their story. It had been the beginning of humanity's real journey into the stars. Zara's claws clicked nervously against her communication pad as she reviewed the daily reports from the mining station Alpha 7. The numbers looked good, productivity was up, and morale among the workers remained stable. As station commander, she took pride in running one of the most efficient operations in the Galactic Mining Consortium. Her reptilian features reflected satisfaction in the holographic display's blue glow. The soft hiss of the door announced someone's arrival. Marcus stepped in her office, carrying 2 steaming cups of that strange earth beverage he called coffee. His movements were unhurried and gentle as always. After 3 years of marriage, she still marveled at how different humans were from every other species she'd encountered. "Thought you might need this," Marcus said, setting 1 cup beside her workstation. His brown eyes held that warm expression that had first drawn her to him during the diplomatic conference on Kepler Station. Zara accepted the cup gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. "The quarterly reports are due tomorrow. I'm trying to make sure everything looks perfect for the consortium inspectors." Marcus settled into the chair across from her desk, his frame appearing almost fragile compared to her 7-foot-tall, muscular build. Humans were such small creatures, barely reaching her shoulder even when she crouched down. Their skin was soft and unmarked by the natural armor plating that protected most sentient species. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons at all. "You worry too much," Marcus said, sipping his coffee. "This station runs better than any other facility in the sector. The workers respect you, production exceeds all targets, and we haven't had a single major incident in 18 months. She reached across the desk with her massive, scaled hand and gently touched his much smaller one. The size difference never failed to amaze her. His bones felt so delicate beneath her careful touch. "Sometimes I wonder how your species ever survived long enough to reach the stars. You're so fragile." Marcus chuckled, that pleasant sound that always made her feel warm inside. "We're tougher than we look. Humans have a way of surprising people." Before she could respond, her communication array erupted in urgent alerts. Red warning lights bathed the office as the emergency klaxon began its distinctive wail. Zara's training kicked in immediately as she accessed the security feeds. "What's happening?" Marcus asked, his voice calm despite the chaos of alarms surrounding them. Zara's blood turned cold as the security displays revealed the source of the emergency. "Pirates. 3 heavily armed ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're jamming our communications and demanding surrender." The main view screen flickered to life, showing a scarred Korthak battle commander with ceremonial bone piercings and war paint marking his achievements. "Mining Station Alpha 7. This is War Chief Brutic of the Crimson Fong Raiders. Your facility is now under our control. Surrender immediately and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in the execution of all personnel." Zara's claws extended involuntarily, her species' natural response to threats. The Korthak were among the most feared pirates in this sector of space. They were massive, even by galactic standards, with thick hide that could stop most small arms fire. Their reputation for brutality was legendary. "How many ships do we have in dock?" Marcus asked, his voice still unnaturally calm. "2 cargo haulers and 1 passenger transport. Nothing with weapons." Zara's mind raced through their options. The station's defensive systems were minimal, designed more for meteor impacts than military assault. "We have security teams, but they're trained for civil disturbances, not warfare." The pirate commander continued his broadcast. "You have 15 minutes to disable your shields and prepare docking bays for our arrival. Any delay will result in immediate destruction of your habitat modules." Zara looked at her husband, expecting to see fear in his eyes. Instead, Marcus was studying the tactical display with an expression she'd never seen before. His usual gentle demeanor had been replaced by something calculating and cold. "Marcus, we need to evacuate the civilian areas. Get the non-essential personnel to the emergency pods." "No," he said quietly. "That won't be necessary." "What do you mean? These are Korthak raiders. They don't take prisoners for ransom. They kill everyone and strip the station for salvage." Marcus stood up and moved to her weapons locker, entering the access code he'd somehow observed her using. "Zara, I need you to trust me. Send a message to the raiders telling them you're considering their demands, but need 20 minutes to organize the surrender." 20 minutes? "Marcus, what are you thinking? We can't fight them. Look at the size of those ships." He was examining the contents of the weapons locker with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "How many raiders do you estimate per ship?" "Maybe 40 or 50 per vessel. So about 150 total." "Marcus, each Korthak warrior stands 8 feet tall and weighs over 400 pounds. They're natural predators. Our security team has 12 members, and they're mostly Velnari administrators with basic combat training." Marcus selected a standard plasma rifle and began checking its power cell and targeting systems with practiced efficiency. Zara had never seen him handle weapons before. During their courtship and marriage, he'd always seemed completely nonviolent, almost pacifist in his outlook. "Where did you learn to do that?" she asked, watching him field strip the weapon and reassemble it in less than 30 seconds. "I had some training before I took the mining job," he said evasively. "Zara, I'm going to ask you to do something that might not make sense. I need you to seal yourself in the command center and don't come out until I give the all clear." "What?" "No, I'm not abandoning my station or my crew." Marcus moved to the communication console and began typing rapidly. "I'm uploading something to the station's database. It's insurance. If something happens to me, make sure this information reaches the Galactic Council." Before she could ask what he meant, the proximity alarms intensified. The first raider ship was approaching Docking Bay 3. On the security monitors, she could see the massive Korthak warriors preparing their boarding equipment. "Please, Zara, trust me. Lock down the command center and don't come out no matter what you hear." Something in his voice made her step back. This wasn't the gentle, quiet human she'd married. This was someone else entirely, someone who moved with purpose and spoke with absolute certainty. "Marcus, you're scaring me. What aren't you telling me?" He paused at the door and looked back at her with those same brown eyes, but now they held depths she'd never noticed before. "I love you, Zara, more than my own life. No one is going to hurt you or your crew while I'm here." The door sealed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving her alone with the blaring alarms and growing dread. On the security feed, she watched her husband walk calmly toward Docking Bay 3, carrying only a single plasma rifle against an army of the galaxy's most feared warriors. She initiated the command center lockdown as he'd requested, but kept the internal security feeds active. Whatever was about to happen, she needed to witness it. Her husband was walking toward certain death, and she couldn't understand why he seemed so confident. The first raider ship completed docking with a metallic clang that shook the entire station. Through the security cameras, she watched the airlock cycle open and the first Korthak warriors step aboard her station. They were even more massive than she'd remembered, their natural armor gleaming under the corridor lights. Marcus stood at the far end of the corridor, looking impossibly small and fragile. The lead Korthak warrior pointed at him and roared something in their guttural language. The universal translator rendered it as a demand for immediate surrender. Marcus raised the plasma rifle to his shoulder. Zara closed her eyes, unable to watch her husband's final moments. When she opened them seconds later, expecting to see his broken body on the deck, she instead saw something that made no sense at all. 3 Korthak warriors lay motionless on the deck, and Marcus was moving toward the remaining raiders with fluid, deadly precision.